paper and we'll quiz them at the end. Great discussion points there, I'm sure. So Pratarp is currently, as Alex mentioned, president of the South Pacific Engineers Association. He began his career as a civil engineer in Melbourne, before returning to Fiji as a design engineer, and later director of Ian McCullough & Co. And in 2001, he started his own consulting firm, NTech Limited. So welcome.
Good morning to you all, and thank you very much, EWB, for inviting me here. I know it's quite a challenge to organize this forum, getting people from the part to taking part in delivering. So well done, EWB. Yes, my name is Pratarp Singh, as Kerry said, and I'm the current president of the South Pacific Engineers Association. I will focus on really what the body SPA is all about and why it was formed, the challenges we have, and probably what's the future like and where it is sitting at the moment, the Secretariat, and how the transition will take place, where it will be in the next few months. Sorry about that. Now, I gave the subject Cornerstone of Successful Economy. Why engineering is the cornerstone? And as I go through, you find the region has got major challenges from engineering point of view. And I think we'll continue to have that issue if it's not addressed in a partnership manner. And the partnership is something which is very important to identify and bring together to make it work. And I think that's lacking quite big time, if I can use the word, but it has to change. And I think identifying the right partners. I would love to see not only engineers, not only students here today, but perhaps bankers, insurance companies, planning agencies, donors. It's hard to get these forums happening, and I think it's quite important to identify right partners and then getting the message across. Engineering does get too technical, and I think that's one of the things which is missing. The development landscape in the region, I'll just go through some of those bullet points that I thought development work, the issues, like I said, challenges, actions, and I think one thing Alex wanted to talk about is need to know the practice. If you happen to be in the jurisdiction, what do you need to know? I'm sure most of you know, but some basic things that get overlooked now and then. I will then come to the ODSP Yates here. And then Alex asked me to just give some personal stories. So I'll tell you what feedback I have given so far. Why I'm here. I'm glad that EWB paid for me to come here, but normally I pay my own self to go and speak at forums. And I think that's one thing that's highly lacking, giving back. So if you look at the South Pacific, you see that It's 2 times probably New Zealand. If you did PNG of the Fiji, I'm just giving some very quick flash there on the population size. Now, the background of the region, the PS is, as you know, we are so vulnerable. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, I was at a World Federation meeting in Geneva, and when you talk to the Africans, the Americans, and the Americans, the Europe, they don't understand the issues and how vulnerable the Pacific is. So, of course, the hazards and the climate change that is destroying our exposure to those hazards, they are cyclones, floods, landslides, and all the rest. So it's quite a challenge. Some statistics there, amazing. 9.2 million people have been affected since 1950. The reported deaths close to 10,000. Look at the cost. How is it funded? It's a pity. I was talking before and in the room with someone how badly public fund is sometimes used. The governments, the donors, if you really take a lot of interest, you'll find how sometimes badly the public fund is used. And then you could do very well with that money, but just some numbers there. Look at the GDP, how it affected the tsunami in Samoa in 2009. We had a flood bank, but in Fiji, I'm based there, 7% of our GDP that flood of 2009. I remember I was personally involved in Radar Australia helping us doing the damage assessment. So really the vulnerability and the sets figures about how disappointing it can be when you expect certain things to be, promised and which is a dead and people don't care. So understanding those numbers, I just on a different topic, but the same thing there. Now, I'll just very quickly run through each country, what it has from engineering capacity-wise professional bodies, and how the South Pacific Engineers Association assisted some of the other countries to form a chapter. The body of SPA is only 4 years old, it's the 5th year, but I'll just run through those. Some of you probably already know PNG has got an institution body, a professional body. They have got engineering education, which is at technology level. Major project ahead, which has been commissioned now, is the LNG project, a huge project, and getting it off the ground was something like $30 million, $1 billion rather. Some local consultancies, they have become very particular in how they register engineers and how they allow outsiders to come and practice. Fiji, similar thing, we have they are a professional body, 48 years old, the Fiji Institution of Engineers. But when you look at it where it is today, it's a shame. Once again, like I said, the giving back is not there, and the pride is not there. Not making the right impact. Talking about funding a conference, people say we don't have money. It's a shame. There's a lot of money out there. You just have to show your course and take it with the right partners, and that's what I said at the beginning, identifying the right partners. Now later I will show you how I managed to get funding for the region. One is just only about a month old. We have got English registration in Fiji. The government never bothered. Since 1978, it's in abeyance. As a proud engineer, I approached the government and I have drafted myself the Chartered Professional Engineers Act. It took me 2 to 3 years at my own pace. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to have the passion, and I think you've got to feel proud. Once again, similar to PNG, we have got BTEC program. Sorry, now we have got in Fiji BE program. Another challenge for us. Huge challenge. The 2 universities are offering BE programs. Very poor industry partnership, structuring the program, they don't know where they're heading, so you've got to interact with the universities and help them. I mean, I suppose New Zealand and Australia is a different case, in parts of the world, but the Pacific has got these issues. You can have a university, but how is it structuring the program, structure-wise? So, interaction. Yeah. Vanuatu, I suppose they didn't have a professional body at all. We're working on it. It's difficult trying to make impact at government level and the legislation they have got, but we're making inroads there. But similar issues. Some of us, like Iveta, they have got a Child Engineers Act, some of you might know, and small membership, very hard to function properly because of very small income through subscription. Tonga did not have a professional body at all, and last year we managed to set up a institution of professional engineers Tonga. So there is a chapter now of this professional body there. Only 25 members, but government is very supportive, and I'm sure it will grow. Of course, the interest has to be there from the Tongans. Similar thing, similar case, Cook Islands, we managed to form a chapter here as well. And when I say forming a chapter, this is all legally legislated bodies, not just forming a constitution and going through whatever. These are legally constituted bodies under certain act. Solomon Islands, not the case, but we're looking forward to. They have got what's called Solomon Islands Built Environment Professionals Association, under which engineers are housed, but we're hoping to form a body within that Sabika. So you can see, just a quick summary of that aspect there. I said it's the Pacific, unique problems caused by small populations, no economy of scale. Geographically, we are very widely distributed, transport-wise very expensive, and of course then the impact of natural disasters, which have serious effect on our infrastructure and capital assets. The economic success of the nations. The other one is of interest, the technical capability. I'll talk about later on about capacity building, which is such a buzzword and everybody using it, but I wonder how many of their organizations use it, like I said, in the right context. Now, engineering education, of course, that's a major issue for us. We're losing a lot of technical capabilities to Australia and New Zealand. The visa 457 by Australia, we seem to lose technicians left, right, and center. Industry-trained people are losing to Australia. If you go through I think there was a Senate inquiry in Australia into employment, education, and workplace relations, and it gives a lot of figures about the shortage of skills, engineering-related skills in Australia. I'm sure New Zealand has got similar. From memory, I think 53% of the engineers in Australia are migrants. It's amazing. And that's what I'm trying to say. The region is losing badly. How do we fill in the gap? How do we fill the gap? Does anyone care? Taxpayers of one country educate, and then they lose, and some developed countries. It hurts. The region gets really badly affected. So, yeah. Now, so what if, after all these issues we realized, and I've been, from day one, I was one of the persons who initiated that we should have a regional body, so that we have a voice. And initially we began with Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, Cook Islands, but I must say, we wouldn't have gone anywhere without the help of IPAs. Which some of you remember, your subscription was there, and South Pacific Engineers Association has benefited immensely over the last 6-7 years. So Dr. Andrew Clinton has been very, very helpful, and I've talked to them later about how the transition will happen of the Secretariat. Typical issues. If you look at our history, reliance on aid. It's there, it will remain there, but at some point in time, these countries have to start to realize that they can do it on their own. So, you notice the amount I've said from here, you express money here, also there's a big donor, I suppose, EU, China. The soft loans that we get from development banks, like Asian Development and the World Bank. For infrastructure was there, but they brought, of course, good engineering standards. That was like the requirements. but then later on you'll see what's happening with the current status. Local capital increasing with tourism, fine. Capital from Asia increasing. Nothing wrong with that, but we do have issues with standards. Asia has made a lot of things affordable, but all of we have learned our lessons. There is limitations on the service and products and understanding the South Pacific. This is quite a challenge. I think people very quickly get off the mark and say, oh, these are what's the common word used, substandard products. I think if there's nothing such as substandard product, it's the manner in which you apply a product in the right context. So, I'll discuss about that later as well. So, really, yeah, just because of this deviation, we got issues with engineering standards. It's not trying to make money anymore. So, it's quite a challenge for engineers, practicing engineers in the industry and the partners they have. Yes, you can see I've mentioned about surplus funds as issues. Construction and reconstruction. It's a major issue. Just because lack of capacity, a lot of projects end up in disputes. Our engineers are not trained for ADR, alternative dispute resolution. That's one area it should be focused heavily to avoid disputes in projects. Somebody assessing a variation doesn't have enough knowledge. You've got to have some legal knowledge as well, in my opinion, more than that. It's not just a technical aspect, but engineering is much more about understanding legal aspects. So, yeah, those just run quickly through those issues there. Now, this is quite important. This is realistic and important. The first bullet point that 800 projects are not developing adequate and appropriate level of capability of capacity. The focus is on projects, trying to deliver for a nation, leaving the assets brick and mortar behind. Building the capacity, understanding how to build the capacity. It's not that Fiji, Papua New Guinea and the region, they need scholarship for students to get the BEs. Where do they go after that? And how is the industry? I mean, if you look at the industry, in my opinion, the industry is very broad. It's not only building and construction, for example. Like I said before, banks are the major donors, or the lenders of projects. How much do they understand about technical building? Do they do their due diligence on the professionals who they engage? Insurances. Without insurances, you can't get a project off the ground. How well is the professional connected to understanding? So, really, the capacity building, in my opinion, the money should be put in these proper trainings and continuously and try to dovetail marry the actual university graduates into the real life. And then, like I said, part of it is ADR, dispute resolution. Access to course of practices and relevant skills is reasonable to poor. New engineering knowledge and knowledge of methods of handling new materials are, like I said before, the technology is moving fast, understanding the products which are coming out in the market. It's an absolute challenge for engineering technologists these days to understand the capability of products. How well are we training and mentoring our people, or ourselves, to send people understand about products? You can, in your know, find identical Puma shoes, Reeboks and whatnot. Same thing is happening with building and construction products. And some of it can be, if it's not applied in the right place, they may look at structural steels, for example, reinforcing steel, capability issues and whatnot. So these are a lot of challenges that the region has got. And how do we handle it? It's quite an issue. Yeah, the workforce is aging, and there are issues that are attracting younger people into the engineering education. Science and mathematics, I suppose, is a little bit difficult. In the region, we have got issues where entry at universities, the cut-off mark is a bit high, I suppose, and trying to attract is quite a challenge. And of course, like I said, New Zealand and Australia are good beneficiaries of trained professionals who come out, technical people out of the region. just jump through that. I think we probably have to talk enough on that. The professional identity for engineers in the region. I was happy and glad that I went to study in Melbourne, so I got a Washington Accord degree. Australia and New Zealand both are signatories of Washington Accord. But what's happening in the region? I mean, the universities, like I said, are pushing through the programs and then churning the results out. But our challenge is, especially Fiji and PNG, how do we help the programs so that they're more close to Washington, Sydney and Dublin Accords? And you notice that we have made contribution and we continue to. Ethics is another major issue in the region, and I'm sure it's everywhere in the world. How do you monitor and how do you take reasonable action? I suppose New Zealand is, our place is pretty good here, and then you've got professional chartered engineers act here. So what happens when you don't have them? How do you handle these things? But major issues. Okay, there's some suggestions for improvement. Like I said, we try to help Tonga and Cook Islands and the other Solomons to have some sort of regulatory body. So that's what we're working. SPA is doing. Building code, we thought we could unify, and I'm sure most of you practice or know that. The issues are the same, why can't the codes in a sense be the same? We've noticed over and over, SPC, the Secretary of the Pacific Community, is a good example. They fund every country, island country, for building code. Just like I said, waste of public fund. So we're trying to, SPEA is trying to, is working on trying to have a unified building code in the region. Compliance documents, help from Australia and New Zealand. Consistent restriction of professional engineering work to competent engineers. Not having a register is another issue. If you have to go and practice in wherever it is, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, like I do notice, you've got to understand the law of the country first. I think we've got projects which have been major projects, multi-billion-dollar projects done in Fiji, which I have a personal sort of like access to information-wise, done by international companies, very reputable companies, which has cost taxpayers a lot of money. They've worked in the country, chartered engineers, of course. They haven't found out what the law of the country was, and made major mistakes. One common one is, I see Chris Free and the crowd, who I know personally quite well, the intercontinental project in Fiji, which was about $400 million project. $20 million of variation went into wrong design. Structural engineer from Gold Coast got it wrong. The local taxpayers have paid $20 million. I'm not sure whether there's a court case against the company or not, but I would have thought that they should be. It's pure negligence, so they didn't understand understanding your codes and laws, like I said, like for example, if I come and practice here, I would straight away make contact with the archives, understand all those sort of things. Of course, there are building codes as well. Benchmarking, I mentioned about it, I talked about it before, about the programs, we are involved with that. We have already done the first work, like I said, creating bodies. Okay, the body is South Pacific Engineers Association, like I said. We realized that there were issues. Competency and experience are one major issue, and then we realized that we should be working as a body to bring in controls. So you can see there just very good, quickly, the issues that I've been talking about. We are in the process of accrediting a couple of programs, the two universities in Fiji, and like I said, for Washington, I talked about equivalence, and I think the first process of evaluation will take place next year. Some background there on professional development, how it should be taking place. Mentoring of young engineers, networking. Now, when we decided to commence with SPA, of course we didn't have PNG in 2007, that's when the idea was born. Then later on we realized that PNG was good to have on board, and they did come on board, so they are a member now. Just some background there on the 2008 workshop we had in Wellington, I think it was Wellington. Now, some of the things we cannot do, and which I suppose our connection with something like someone like IPEX, or EWE, is in Australia. We can't create instantaneous recognition of known upward qualifications like that. It's important, upward is important. The International Engineering Alliance has got certain requirements. It's very important, so, but the SPA cannot do that. Membership growth, of course, there's a problem everywhere, I suppose. But Australia is the United Nations, I think they've got over 101,000 members. New Zealand is about 16 to 20,000, somewhere around there. But for the region, it's very difficult because there's money involved and all this, so that's quite a challenge. The next one is, when we were looking at what stage, we thought it was not easy to get money for certain things. But about a month ago, we wrote a concept paper to New Zealand Aid on Southwest Pacific's earthquake resilience program. And I must say, it was good news for us. It was $500,000 put aside by New Zealand Aid. Although we asked for $1.5 million to study the major infrastructure resilience of Fiji, Cook Islands and Samoa. Of course, we were surprised we got sidelined because we don't have our projects in order at the moment, and for some reason Cook's was not over as well. Maybe the infrastructure is not big, but Samoa, there's been $500,000, and some of you might be involved in the project on zoning, earthquake zoning, and for floods and cyclones as well. So that's within 5 years we managed to get there. And also, we're quite lucky through Fiji Institute of Engineers. We had 2 years running with the Commonwealth of Australia training for disaster management, and we managed to take the outcomes and lessons of crisis to Fiji. Chris Freya was one of the speakers, and it was a very successful conference about 2 days. So funding was all provided. That's why I say that there's a lot of money out there, but you can just identify the right courses and all the rest. Donors, we have got major donors, and sorry, my time is up here. I haven't been looking at that one. But yeah, we've got major donors, and donors are, of course, that's public funds, and I think it's very important that they are respected and how money is utilized. So this engineers have got responsibility there. I think I can leave this behind probably, and then get access to it. Our policy papers. This is on the net there, and some of the areas we get involved in. And yeah, I mean, making good connection with policymakers is very important. I've noticed. When I say policymakers, I use the word policymakers most, and they say, "Oh, you don't want to get involved in politics." It's not politics at all. You've got to be keeping government informed, and that's the only way you can develop your profession. So, changes at policy level happen. How does it happen? It's not the lawyers, the Congress will do it for us. We have to do it engineers. Key focus areas, leadership and partnership is very important. Political positions, all those. Yeah, I think one thing I find is the passion is not there. I'm not going to say there about being proactive and understanding about various things that happen. It's just, I think, slowly gaining momentum, but there's no way to go. So I think this is very important that such forums are held, and like I said, right partners are identified, and the rest. Need to practice if you go into another country, like I said, your understanding of laws. industry culture, and of course, business environment. Just very quickly here, the personal give back. Now I've been involved quite heavily with my institution in Fiji and South Pacific over the last probably 8-9 years now, and like I said, this is the first time, and I travel probably 2-3 times a year, and I find myself just because I have a passion for engineering, and I think there should be more giving back from engineers, absolutely. So, just in summary, like I started this vulnerable area with the South Pacific, and we've got many challenges, skill set and all the rest. So, yes, capacity building the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I didn't want to stop it because it was so interesting. Sounds like we've got a bit of a challenge there. Can I invite you both to come up again, and we'll take some questions from the floor. So if anyone's got a question they'd like to put forward, please raise your hand and introduce yourself, and try and keep the questions short so we can get through a few of them. Anyone? One at the back there? You might have to shout loudly if you have a microphone.
I'm Rowana from JPSEWB Auckland. I have a question for Seth. You raised a question, why do our leaders set goals? Why do they set goals which we cannot achieve? So I have some thoughts. Maybe leaders, there's no continuity, maybe those leaders change, or other things, or maybe it comes down to the things on the local project side, like what Seth, Pratarp's presentation was saying, that maybe capacity development on these 800 projects are not emphasized and all that stuff. But what do you think are some of the barriers for failing to achieve the MDGs?
I think it's because there are so many different, that development aid is often a real political football that gets kicked around, and that one of the things that the international leaders are really asking for the next period is a new commitment to a global partnership, that people would actually start to work together in a really integral way. I think about New Zealand wanting to have a seat on the Security Council, and I was just thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking how amazing it would be to be sitting in the Security Council, and you've got the Russians, and you've got the Americans, and you've got other forces there, and you've got all the people who could actually discuss the issues which would bring serious conflict to a resolution, and yet they can't do it. They just can't, and you see the bloodletting, you see the horrendous situation going on, and it's a little that same way in terms of our leaders, in terms of why can't we get them to commit in this way? And I feel that there's a huge need for this generation. I'm one of the young people that's coming, the younger generation, to rise up across the world and demand of its leaders that they keep the promises that they make. That we need our own, Arab Spring, because there's a whole lot more of us than them. And we need people to stand up and say, if leaders make promises, they should keep those promises. And hold their feet to the fire when they don't. Because to me, it's such a disgrace that the developed countries make promises and then the check is never put in the mail. It's a shocker. And I think there is a real desire, a group like Engineers Without Borders across the world, in other places, for youth organisations to come and really hold leaders to account. Not to sort of just submit to sort of a pessimism that change can't happen. Change can happen if we actually get ourselves organised. But it does require we, the people, making sure that our leaders actually represent us in an honourable way and a consistent way. And I think those are the kind of things I'd like to see New Zealand say at the Security Council. Just to be that kind of field leader for honesty and integrity. We can't do it in superpower, but we certainly can do it with our moral leadership.
Any further questions? Another one at the back?
Yes, it's not the grades that you gave it, I would actually give them much worse grades. One of the reasons being is I was actually part of managing an MDG project in the Pacific. And one of the biggest problems is it's almost become like a numbers game. You know, we've got to reach this number by this date. So countries are struggling to meet those targets, yet they're not looking at the quality of the service or the products that are coming out of it. So I totally agree with the grades you put there, but some of them I think they're much worse. And I would even go as far to say most of them would be Fs.
Yeah, I sort of wanted to have, because there's a few that maybe are close to my heart, which I think particularly the goals relating to maternal and child health.
Yeah.
It just sucks.
Gender in the Pacific is probably one that it's going to take years for us to reach those targets. In education, for example, you know we've got numbers going to schools, but we look at the quality of the education. You've got kids still, for example, in Samoa, they've made it free education for primary schools, and they're now looking to make it free for secondary schools. But you look at the teachers that are teaching these kids, and the sorts of graduates we're bringing out of the secondary, the teachers' college, aren't to that standard. So, you know, we may be meeting the numbers, but we're not providing the right quality service.
I stand corrected.
I just want to make a comment. I think I put enough emphasis on giving back. I think we're very good at criticizing. We don't look at the problem and say, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to bloody solve this problem. We don't have that. And I think everyone keeps criticizing, and I'm saying that for engineers, for example, if you want to change the engineering landscape, if there's a need, you can't just sit down and talk about it. You've got to take it up. You don't have to be a politician. If you can make one, great. But you've got to have enough confidence and you've got to have enough knowledge about the subject to take it to a politician and change his mind. I think feeding them the right information, and we'll get some serious people, then they will understand what progress and get is all about. I think at the moment, like I said, I'd love to see, I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but people will not get off the bum and do things, sorry about the language, but I know it. I know it's because I throw money every year. I spend enormous amount of my salary in traveling the world and not only bragging, but only 3 weeks ago I was in Wellington for 1 whole week, funded my own way, paid the International Engineering Alliance, sat in the meeting for 1 week. It was $6,300 for me. $1 is very big. But why I came? To take the message back, and I was lucky to be invited, because that body is got the work behind the doors. But I want to make an impact of engineering, take engineering education in the South Pacific to the Washington, Port Sydney, and Port Dublin, and Port level. So I decided to say to them, I want to be sitting in this forum. And I got there. So instead of criticizing what I thought, we got together and feel very proud. Sorry.
Chris Whittington, AUT, no question. On the surface of it, it looks bad that 3% is a long way away from the 7%. I'd like to know how you actually arrived at that figure, and does it actually include everything, i.e. money coming from government in terms of aid programs, money that might come from charities, and various charities, of course. Does that 3% include all of that money?
Well, the thing was that what the governments of the world promised was 7% of their GNI would be spent on official development aid. And that's what they're not. That's not what they keep it. You know, in New Zealand, the New Zealand public is an amazing public in terms of generosity. You know, and New Zealanders care a hell of a lot more than impact does. You know, and you know, I think they're amazing New Zealanders. But the promise was at an official level from government on the money that government considered.
So it's probably difficult to answer this, but if the amount of money that comes from various sources, from charities and stuff in New Zealand, could be added to what the government done. Where do you think we would sit as a country? Above our 7% or?
Well, we're about 0.3. But the government ODA level is 500 million a year, and the New Zealand development organisations raise collectively around 180 million, and 120 million of that is from the public. So 120 million from the New Zealand public and 500 million from the government.
So it really is a big priority.
I think we've probably got one more question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Fran from Canterbury Professionals. My question is for the set, kind of related to our New Zealand's, well, our 3%, but so it's an election year. How do you portray to the public, you know, this international development spending when we still have a lot of underprivileged in our society and we have a large gap to fill there? I suppose a bit preaching to the converted, but how would you emphasise that to the general public, like that this money is worth spending when there's a lot of people who aren't, you know, there's a lot of kids who aren't feeling close to our schools?
It's a really difficult one because I kind of see, you know, and I have to use a personal example here. I see the kind of money that World Vision will spend in the community over 15 years, and we see measurable change. You know, they're there, they go to there. You know, we took, what's her name, to see the girl from TV1, we took her over to Malawi, and she could see the change. And I come back to New Zealand after 25 years being away, seeing that that's what's supposed to happen. And I look at the money that New Zealand is pouring into social welfare, and there's no frickin' change. Something's really broken. You know, and whether it's the National Party, which says less money, or the Labour Party, which says more money, it's just all about pouring money into that same hole, which doesn't seem to make any difference. And so I sort of think we actually need something different in the way we do our work rather than creating more dependency and this actually, you know, what development work is all about is about sustainable development, helping people get self-reliance and transformation. I was talking to some colleagues recently, they said the word transformation is never heard in our caucus. You know, so yeah, I think New Zealanders do require us to make sure, but I think the way we're doing stuff in New Zealand is patently not working. You know, and World Vision would be out of business if we were so effective overseas. So maybe we should put them all out of business and try something new.
Great. I'm sure there's time to continue some of these discussions in the break, but we get into that now. So can we just